So, this is a video by a YouTuber named Anarchyball entitled Questions for Status, because if you disagree with the magical powers of the free market, you are a statist. Let's watch.
Hey statists, we've got some questions for you.
Well, I'm not a statist, at least according to, myself I'm not. But hey, I'll be generous and give you some answers.
If a kid couldn't afford lunch because the school bullies kept taking a percentage of his allowance, you wouldn't blame the kid's parents for not giving him enough. So why is it that when people struggle financially, you blame the employer who provides them with money and not the government which is taxing them?
Okay, two things. One, in the case of the bully's only taking it for itself. Well, the government is at least supposed to. It doesn't always, I'll give you that. But it's supposed to use it for the greater good. If the bullies were taking the money to maintain the playground, basically, that'd be kind of different. And two, wouldn't people struggle even more financially in the libertarian world because there wouldn't be a minimum wage? I know that guy T, one of the libertarians in this video, is against the minimum wage. So basically, they're gonna struggle even more financially, even without the taxes.
For fans of democracy, I would ask, is it okay to forcibly rob, control, or otherwise victimize somebody as long as the majority approves of it?
No, but what does that have to do with anything?
We all know that every economic system has market failures. Capitalism, socialism, communism, whatever. But my question is, why do you feel morally justified in forcing other people to subsidize these failures? Why should
I don't.
I be forced to subsidize failed electric car companies like Fisker or failed government initiatives like Obamacare? Shouldn't I have the right to decide what risk I want to take with my own money?
I get it, you're against the greater good. Give me your point.
How come you want to ban things that you don't like?
I don't.
As long as they're not hurting other people, what's the big deal?
Okay, you have clearly never watched my channel before.
Statists of the left who are always talking about how government's going to help the poor and demarginalize marginalized groups. I don't understand this. From the ancient world through the Middle Ages all the way up to modern times, governments have largely conspired against the poor. I'm thinking in particular a century ago with eugenics programs and segregation programs and zoning programs.
Okay, so some governments suck. Give me your point now.
Business regulation and union rules, everything was designed to exclude, marginalize, and impoverish groups that didn't have power. Governments are always controlled by rich people.
I have never denied that. I, however, have denied the libertarian idea of if there was no government, no, we need to have a better government. No government at all is really, really stupid.
That's just the way it works. Why do you think the government is the right means to help the poor?
It depends on the government. Again, a socialist-ish government where, there are genuine welfare programs can help the poor. Off the top of my head, libertarian government where there's no minimum wage, I don't think slavery would be outlawed in the libertarian government because that keeps issues in the free market. Basically, libertarians are the biggest oligarchists. They just hide it with fancy words.
Makes no sense to me.
So I punched this commie face in and said, "How do you like those marks?" Oh, we're recording? Does my hair look okay?
No.
How can you claim on one hand to be anti-guns, yet on the other hand, you want the state to take guns away at gunpoint? Pew pew!
I have never said any of this. Okay? Finally! Two and a quarter minutes in, we finally see the star himself.
Has slaughtered 250 million of its own people in acts of democide. How can you trust such a beast to rule over you?
And people have also slaughtered millions of people themselves in acts of murder. How could you trust them to do anything as well? You see, I can make general statements too. It's not that hard.
And as some of you argue for, to be disarmed to.
Why is it that
I have never argued that.
no matter how much money the government takes from its citizens, it's always broke?
What?
If keeping 100% of someone else's income is slavery, then at what percentage is it no longer slavery?
I assume 99%. But even then, okay, how much pain would it be before it's slavery? Because again, a libertarian world, I'm not even convinced slavery wouldn't be allowed in a libertarian world, to be honest with you. But in a libertarian world, they'd be allowed to pay, okay, you get 1 cent per year. Actually, they could probably make it like 1 cent per century if they wanted to. Because there'd be no minimum wage, because, again, you are understanding why you're going against your own best interest.
Can a bunch of people who don't have the right to do a certain thing grant to somebody else the right to do it? And if not, how did Congress acquire the right to do things that you and I don't have the right to do?
Can you give me some examples of this?
Why are you comfortable spending borrowed money knowing your children will have to pay it off down the line? You're increasing their eventual taxes before they can even vote. Isn't that the definition of taxation without representation?
Okay, you're talking about Social Security. The thing is with Social Security is they're going to get paid back too. It's a cycle. They pay taxes now, so the generation before them gets extra money, and then that next generation pays them, so that generation, their generation gets some money, and then so on and so on. It's not a perfect system. It is going to need some tweaking decently soon. However, it's not this, oh my god, there are a whole bunch of taxes. Oh my god.
If people are so f***ing greedy and selfish that we need governments to steal from the rich and give to the poor and needy, then why do over 1.5 million charities exist globally, with
Because charities can be corrupt.
$373 billion dollars being raised in 2015 alone?
Because corruption doesn't actually exist. Now, ignore the fact that that disproves every single thing I have said in this entire video, and all my buddies have said in this entire video, and every single point I have, corruption does not exist.
And that's not including the Clinton Foundation's money laundering operation. Alleged money laundering operation.
You do realize that making something illegal won't make it go away. Guns, drugs, the black market will provide.
I have said that same thing many times, okay, I admit. Also, Anarchyball. You know, firefighters are paid for by the government. You got some candles back there. Imagine that paint on fire. You'd have to buy a private firefighter. Also, like the bong.
Here's some of the money government wasted. The government spent $1.4 million on an app that just simply points left and right for the TSA. That should have been done for way cheaper. Oh, that's not...
I agree. I do not think, however, we shouldn't have taxed it to pay for it. I just think we should have taxed less.
crazy enough for you? How about this? The government wasted $1.4 trillion on a jet that doesn't even work. That's enough to buy every homeless person in the United States a mansion. A $600,000 home. Oh, that's not crazy enough for you.
It is. Move on.
The government lost $6 trillion. Knowing all of this, do you still think the government can spend your money more wisely than you can?
How can you...
Okay, depends on the government. If we're talking about the U.S. government, no. If we're talking about, I don't know, some country with a good government, we'll take, I don't know, Canada maybe? I hear England's got an okay one. Then, okay, maybe.
Rationalize basic philosophical concepts such as the non-aggression principle as being quote-unquote too difficult for society to be educated on and abide by, yet believe that hundreds of thousands of pages of federal and state regulations, clauses, case files, and amendments are somehow easier.
I do believe laws should be general so there aren't any loopholes to get through them, especially corporate regulation, mind you. And I'm nowhere near familiar enough with the non-aggression principle. In fact, I haven't even heard of it until I watched this video. in order to actually answer that question. I do, however, believe laws for the general public should have some gray areas, mind you, but they should be very few and only accessible in certain areas. So basically, I don't know.
If it's wrong for you to do a certain thing, can you, by voting, make it right for someone else
Are you
to
gonna
do?
actually have a point?
If the competitive market in
No, seriously, let's go back. Who was that guy? Larkin Rose. You have said this same thing 3 different times with different words now. Are you gonna actually ask a decent question?
ingenuity of capitalism can deliver us things like iPhones, 3D printers, and private spaceships, why should services as important as justice, roads, and defense be monopolized by the state?
Right-wing
Roads, because no one's gonna build a privatized road and not have issues with it. Justice and defense, I kind of get. I do think that the people should be able to talk more about defense and justice and have more of a say in it, but that's another story, which is actually the whole point of a jury, by the way, you know? Injustice. Really, I'll give you your questions kind of interesting. Maybe I could go into more detail about it in another video.
Statists. When you're opposing gun laws, you argue the government shouldn't be so powerful that it can disarm the populace. So why, when it comes to drug laws, do you argue the government should be so powerful that it can tell people what they can put into their own bodies?
Now,
I've argued the thing about guns. I never argued the thing about drugs. Again, you clearly don't know the person answering this. You don't know some 50 sub YouTuber, Mr. Guy in a 78,000 sub channel? Or I guess you don't have it. But still. So, I'm not the person to answer this.
to status of the right,
I love the way this person talks. Status of the right.
claim you're opposed to socialism and don't see government as the answer, and yet invariably you're celebrating the cops, the first responders, and the fire departments, and the jails, war, all big public sector programs.
Okay, I get a lot of those, like the police and the jails, but the firefighters, really? I don't see many people going around saying, yeah, firefighters! Yeah! You know,
It's a kind of the socialism
the answer, by the way, is because they're hypocrites.
that you love. Why do you think that that's going to work better than the private sector?
If people are innately good, what is the need for government? And if
People aren't innately good.
people are innately evil, what is to stop them using government to cause evil to one another? And would it not be better that their influence be limited to that which they can achieve voluntarily, rather than to give them the added benefit of legitimised force?
I'm not even sure what you mean by that. You just said a bunch of fancy words of, if people are evil, well, government can be evil too, yeah. And, you know, the Declaration of Independence says that we can separate from that government too. So we can say, okay, screw you, government, we're going to make a better one. Heck, why aren't you doing that?
Left-wing statists. When you're opposing drug laws, especially weed, you argue the government shouldn't be so powerful that it can tell people what they can and can't put into their own bodies. So why, when it comes to gun laws, do you think the government should be so powerful that it can have a complete monopoly over effective force?
Okay, I'm against gun control, but the answer to that question is obvious. Drugs only harm you intentionally. Guns are designed to harm other people.
Here are the things you can't do without government permission. Build a house, drive a car, own a gun, go fishing, collect rainwater, hunt,
Okay, collect rainwater. Can you give me some citations?
cross the road,
What?
get married, leave the country, start a business, fly on a commercial plane, take drugs, work. It's actually hard to think of something that doesn't require government permission. Knowing this, how can you say you're free?
I read 1984 once, so I'm the smartest person in the universe.
If being a democratically elected constitutional republic creates legitimate political authority, Does that mean that all the things that were done by the democratically elected constitutional republics of the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and North Korea, all those things were legitimate and justified?
Okay, I have a question for you. Why do you think asking the same question 4 times suddenly makes it smarter?
If you're a proud, government-loving liberal who champions personal choice, could you please explain why I can't choose to not fund the murder of innocent children abroad?
I have spoke out against that many times. It's because our tax system. I do think that taxes should be changed to the point where, we actually use it for good reasons. However, at the same time, I do not think taxes should be abolished. Doesn't that sound like a far better position than taxation failed?
Really want the same people who...
I like some of these posters back there. I can barely read them. I'm sure they're probably a little funny if I actually bothered to read them. This one looks kind of funny. Actually, it doesn't really.
who run the DMV to be in charge of your health care?
Wait, what was that?
Run the DMV to be in charge of your health care?
No, I don't want private corporations to be in charge of my healthcare, though, so...
Why is it that you prefer anti-discrimination laws which force those who hate other races to hide that prejudice and make money off of those other races, to a system where they could be open about said prejudice and lose money?
You guys often...
That's actually an interesting question. Personally, I think the answer is, it's kind of unconstitutional to have the anti-discrimination laws, basically. That guy T, I actually kind of like it. His background, he's got a Grand Theft Auto 5 poster, got Bitcoin, the people's currency. Truth, it's not, or at least I think that's truth. No, that's a TH, so it's not. I don't know. I penciled the best book of all time.
Say that libertarians have too much faith in the goodness of people. Why then do you, in the same breath, argue that I give up my right to bear arms and entrust my personal safety to police in gun-free zones? That seems like pretty strong faith in human nature to me.
I don't.
Status, since the war on drugs has been an absolute failure, what makes you think a war on guns would be any different?
Actually, I think I tweeted something almost the exact same as that like a few months ago. See if you can find it.
Can you morally justify the federal government preventing a small territory from seceding from a larger country?
Well, wait, what? I need to re-listen to that. It was just so...
Be any different?
Oh, so that's what Big Dicko looks like.
Can you morally justify the federal government preventing a small territory from seceding from a larger country?
Yes, because it is immoral for states that just don't like the law to be like, yeah, well, screw you, to go. At the same time, if the people want to do that, that's one thing, but I don't think the government of the state should have the ability to. Heck, you're going against statism. What if they break off and they become the biggest, most statist, socialist, authoritarian nation ever? Then what, Captain? What if you're part of that nation, too? That's why they're breaking off.
How is me writing down I'm in charge and then getting 20 friends to sign it any different from the drafting of the Constitution?
If roads are so...
What does that even mean?
So complicated and magical that they can only be built by governments...
I'm not saying that. I'm saying they can only be built for public use by a government because people will try and privatize them.
Then why do they hire private companies to actually build the eh? My fucking roads!
Why is every logical explanation we provide about how something will work just pure speculation, while any doomsday scenario you pull out of your ass about anarchism is absolute truth?
It isn't. It's equal speculation. The difference is my speculation is usually based on evidence of, how people work. Yours is based on the free market is godlike powers.
Now, to the status of the left and right, who are constantly against free trade and
That's all, folks.
promoting protectionism and warlike foreign trade policies, why is it that you think trade between nation states is any different from trade between states in the U.S., between Vermont and New Hampshire or Georgia and Mississippi, which we understand is a good thing because it broadens the division of labor and makes everybody better off? Why do you not see that that's also true internationally? And why do you think a solution to this non-problem is to raise taxes on the American people?
Who is arguing this? Again, I'm not familiar enough with the trade ideas to really comment on this. But who is saying, oh no, you see there's this huge difference between trade states and trade nations and we need to tax them? What? Are you just throwing in every libertarian boogeyman possible?
How highly do you think of yourself that you think it's your right to impose?
Well, I don't think highly of myself. I mean, I do, but that's only because I am awesome.
Your views on people you've never met and tell them it's good for them.
Because genuinely people are similar in nature. And even then, I'm talking to you. I know you're going against your own best interests because you seem to be against oligarchy. And again, libertarian ideology leads to oligarchy.
Given my first question...
Wait, did that guy even ask a question? Let's go back.
Your views on people you've never met and tell them it's good for them.
Given my...
He didn't ask anything!
First question to right-wingers and my second to left-wingers, comparing drug rights, which half of you advocate, and gun rights, which the other half of you advocate, it seems to me that there are two possible compromises. Either we go full authoritarian and none of you get what you want, or we go full libertarian and you can both have what you want. Which sounds more appealing to you?
I guess full libertarian in this scenario, but at the same time, I do think that, it's a complicated issue. Just watch my channel. I've talked about this before.
And given that answer that you gave, don't you think there are one or two other issues we could apply this reasoning to?
Such as?
You keep saying
Great answer!
Have to be moral by voting for a lesser evil this year. Could you please explain how any kind of evil is ever moral?
If you've ever said
It isn't Jill Stein 2016.
there ought to be a law, or if you believe that government is the best solution to most of life's problems, I have one question for you. Are you prepared to kill? Every law, no matter how big or small it appears to be, is backed by violent force, and in many cases, death.
When an individual's moral conscience...
Okay, Adam Morgan, like your Bob on Battlefield.
conflicts with the commands and rules of lawmakers and law enforcers, is an individual morally obligated to do what they believe to be wrong simply to obey the law?
Listen to...
Obligated, yes, if they want to abide by the laws. At the same time, they can do what I've done and talk about why the laws are stupid and try and, have people help change the laws. What you're doing.
This ridiculousness. We protect our president with guns, but our children with paper gun-free zone signs. Congress has a 9% approval rating. Government can't even balance a budget. We are about to reach a $20 trillion debt. Social Security and Medicare and other socialist policies are unsustainable.
No, they're just going to need minor tweakings in certain years. Like Social Security, I think that's what it is. It might be Medicare. I'm pretty sure it's Social Security. We'll still have 75% of its benefits by the time it goes bankrupt. So it just needs minor tweaks.
The drug war kills more people than drugs itself.
Citation.
How can you say government is effective?
A major question that I have for proponents.
Yes, because the government in a libertarian society, the giant corporations are going to be so much more effective than a government that's been bought out by giant corporations.
of state economic regulations in particular is how exactly can you sleep at night knowing the economic destruction that you have created? The effect of government regulations on output has been calculated to have an accumulated reduction cost on the American GDP of nearly $40 trillion just since 1949.
By who?
In other words, absent of any federal economic regulations, after World War II, we could have tripled our GDP. Every citizen could have an average income of $333,000 instead of $53,000, a $277,000 increase in the average income. This doesn't even factor in the cost of compliance, rent seeking, and state-level regulation.
Okay, do you have any evidence of any of this, or are you just going to keep saying it?
And so much less poverty without state regulations on our economy. So how can you look your opponents in the eye and claim that your regulations are somehow for the common man?
They're for the common man because without Medicaid, a lot of people would be less insured. Without Social Security, they'd have to work for far longer. Without roads, they wouldn't have anywhere to drive. Or without public roads, at least. Without public school. And again, this is assuming that we kept everything but certain regulations. Again, the minimum wage, if we didn't keep that, well, then again, it'll probably be like 1 cent an hour. And then we'd have to work like 2 years in order to get a simple cheeseburger. Do you not see why you're going against your own best interests? I mean, that's really it. I'm Ephrom Joe, and I'm signing.